Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I am Rachel Fox. I'm the MD of Marketing at Loop Horizon. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a sore throat, apologies. My background is in everything to do with retention, acquisition, data-led performance marketing. I've worked for a number of years in the betting industry before joining Loop a few years ago, and I head up the marketing function. I spend quite a lot of my time not only working with our existing clients, but also working with new clients, trying to find out exactly how we can help them and making sure that we're applying our services to them and their bespoke needs. So yeah, looking forward to taking you through some of our hopefully inspiring thoughts today around marketing transformation. Atta.
Over to me. I'm Atta. I'm head of customer value here at Loop Horizon. My background is in CRM, data planning, various aspects of campaign management. My previous experience has been predominantly client side at Sky, TalkTalk, British Gas, among other places, and some agencies. So yeah, I help our clients get more out of their CRM and customer marketing in a quantified, financially valuable way. Over to Nicola.
Thanks, Atta. Hi, I'm Nicola Bajani. I'm head of marketing services here at Loop. My background is very much client-based, so I've spent some time at the AA, John Lewis, and 3Mobile. I head up the team of marketing consultants here at Loop, work with a number of different clients in sort of enabling and empowering them for data-driven marketing. Back to you, Rach.
So that's us. Yeah. So we are here today because we want to share with you some of effectively our top 10 list of things that we have captured from our experience, both client side, but also working at Loop Horizon with our clients here. And it surrounds the things which are maybe not the main headlines for a marketing transformation, but the unsung heroes, as we like to call them. So obviously going through a marketing transformation, it's quite a big undertaking. And yeah, through our own experiences, we have compiled this list of watch outs. They're things which we advise you to be considering at the beginning of your journey to try and help you have a nice smooth transition through the process. So we're hoping to share some of that experience with you today. And like Ashley said, if you've got questions, please do send them in and we will have a Q&A towards the end. So without further ado, we're going to start with number one. So our first watch out is the power of strategy.
So that one's with me. Look, transformation projects are often centered around new tech, new capability, new tools, newly aligned data and systems, which are, of course, brilliant. They're brilliant enablers and they're foundational. But in and of themselves, if not targeted on the right things, they won't deliver transformational value. You want to start with a solid strategy. A strategy that's aligned to your business's goals, to your stakeholders' goals, to your boss's goals, right? Ultimately, what you want to do is make your bosses happy by meeting their objectives, creating that goodwill, and opening the door for future investment. So go back, look at your business's objectives. My recommendation would be look at insights, spend a bit of time up front if you can, talking to your analytics team, gather some insights to build a case for what you're going to focus on, build that evidence, and then go into action mode. Focus your efforts on the things that matter, and you'll be certain that your transformation is delivering on what you and your stakeholders need. Next one then. Number two, senior alignment.
Thanks, Atta. So as many of you will know, digital transformation often requires quite a hefty investment from the business, and there are often high return on investments expected as a result of that investment. Very much linked to the last tip, getting early alignment on the strategy, but also on the expected outcomes is really, really critical to success. And quite often that alignment can and should start with very senior management so that they can communicate and cascade to their relevant teams. So my view on that is actually having very honest conversations and setting expectations. One way to do that, and I know a lot of companies do have this as a sort of process, is business cases. I understand they can feel very long-winded, but actually the beauty of business cases they are a great opportunity to document and set expected results and ROI so that everybody is very clear as to what they are. The other thing that I would say on this one is keeping stakeholders informed along the way. So just to avoid surprises, my view is sort of over communicating at the start, you know, making sure that everybody is informed on a regular basis, and actually talking until you're told to stop. You know, nobody never wants to be communicated to, and actually I think the more you do that along the way, particularly with senior management, they feel informed and they feel confident that you as teams are in charge of that transformation. The other point that I say is remember to celebrate the small wins. So obviously there is a big goal at the end of any transformation, and everybody wants to get to that, but actually along the way there's some really critical milestones, and for project visibility and to make the team feel particularly valued, it's important to make sure that you're celebrating those small wins and highlighting those with senior leaders. All of that will keep momentum and a sense of movement along the key milestones. That's it. We're now on to the third tip, which is value beyond revenue.
So that one's for me. So actually building this on what Nicola was just saying, quite often the way that we work with clients and, you know, our recommendation going through a transformation is to not expect everything to happen overnight and to expect all of your value to suddenly appear overnight. Realistically, that doesn't happen in practice. So it's really important that your senior stakeholders are aware of that and that you're able to track and measure and progress through an iterative build. That's kind of the way that we work with our clients, is through that iterative process by looking at the quick wins, the next development stage, and then how you can keep progressing with that momentum. It's really, really important to have that. In terms of value, we have a lot of conversations again up front. It's really important to do this at the beginning of the process in terms of what are you actually trying to achieve, what are your KPIs. Revenue is always going to be near the top of that list, and that's absolutely right. However, it's not the only thing that you should be concerned about. We work across two main areas and we look at our value approach. One is within the growth area, what are the other things that you want to see improve before you get to the revenue stage? So it might be looking at things like your channel engagement. So actually, are you driving more traffic through to your website than you were before? That's a really good thing to be able to demonstrate the value and the intent of your customers and what they then might go on to do, before necessarily having to wait until they've gone through all of the different elements and the iterations of their journey and making a purchase. So we really recommend that you're looking at those different value sort of demonstrators, as well as, you know, obviously the key revenue finder at the end. And there's a lot that you can do there, whether it is looking at something simple like if people are maybe engaging in your emails or going through to the site, but also looking at things like intent models and propensity models and any changes in the behaviours that they're showing and their likelihood of then continuing to be even more valuable to you. So that's one area. The other area which quite often gets overlooked is around actually efficiencies. So by going through transformation, there's quite often some operational efficiencies, maybe not right at the beginning, but as things progress. So the teams who are actually delivering a lot of your marketing may actually be able to do it faster, easier, which obviously has an efficiency benefit from an operating cost point of view. But you will also hopefully see that as you're starting to test and learn and apply your marketing in a different way, that you can actually be more efficient in how you are spending your marketing budget. So if you think about maybe your paid media budgets over the year, you can then look at actually how are you being more efficient in who you're targeting and how you're doing it, and being more effective in your channel spend that way. So in summary, yes, revenue is very important. That will always be quite often the end goal, the end output, but there's a lot of different elements of value that you should be tracking, both from a growth and from an efficiency point of view along the way.
Can I just add on operational efficiency, just
Yes.
one small point? Operational efficiency sometimes gets a bad rap. It's seen as we're going to cut jobs, or we're going to cut budgets, or we're going to do something like it. Doesn't have to be that way. Recently, at a major client of ours, we drove a lot of operational efficiency, both in spend and marketing team time to deliver. But instead of that resulting in cut budgets or reduced headcount, I think the secret sauce that where the magic happens is using that time and budget among the teams to do more experimentation.
Yeah.
And that's where the transformation will start happening.
So it's more effective use of that time opposed to less time. Yes, completely agree.
Cool.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So next up, we're on to number 4 is unite as one team. So we've got a few now that are more to do actually with the people side of things.
Yeah.
So I think this one's yours, Nicola.
Thank you. So previously I spoke about sort of senior alignment. Obviously just as critical to success is kind of the cascade alignment at all levels across the business. So often when it comes to transformation, various teams across the business are involved, whether that be marketing, data, tech teams, but getting their thoughts from the very beginning and throughout the entire process is key. So my view on that is making sure to stop and listen, because actually these people will be your advocates around the business. There are different ways of collaborating. I've worked in several war room formats, which kind of pulls together advocates across the business who are specialists in their own right. Getting them into a combined group, meeting on a weekly basis in an area that's a dedicated war room with plans and processes and strategy and inspirational things on the wall. It can really make people feel like they're part of a team and motivate through visual. Equally, consultancies are great, just like Loop, we can act as a bridge between siloed departments. So joining dots, and the beauty of bringing someone in like Loop is that we are a bit of a neutral third party, because we understand that sometimes there can be friction or misaligned priorities between different teams. And the beauty of, bringing someone like Loop in is that we can very much kind of listen and empathise with different teams and bring together and join the dots. And we certainly worked with a number of clients in that sort of scenario, and we quite often set up what we call multidiscipline pods, so pulling in different resources from siloed business areas to align on fixed objectives and a shared vision, very much bringing those people together and smoothing some of those frictions. I think at a very minimum, from a stakeholder point of view, just holding cross-functional workshops. So, if you don't have the size of the company, or you don't necessarily have the freedom to pull in different people on a regular basis, having and prioritizing cross-functional workshops at different stages can really help make people feel valued around the business, and contributing to any transformation project. And importantly, just very, very much listened to. And that's really, really key, is that listening. Okay, tip number 5, the art of translation. Sorry, Atta.
So that follows on really nicely from your point, Nicola. You talked about uniting teams and bridging and working in new ways. At its heart, most data-driven transformation projects, they are a joint venture. They're a joint venture between your technical teams and your business teams. And you're pushing towards the same goal, right? So it's critical that these two teams, your technical teams and your business teams, are speaking the same language and they feel like they're part of the same team. And I think as transformation leaders, it's a huge part of our job to bridge the gap between them and make sure that happens, so that they feel upfront that while they have different approaches and different things that they do, they're all working towards the same goal. So my advice on this one then is upfront, as soon as you can, either act as the translator or find one. Try and do this nice and early in your project, but it's never too late to do so. And what you're trying to do, or the characteristic you're looking for, is 3 things. Someone to have a strong business and commercial acumen, as well as an understanding of analytics and an appreciation of analytics and data and how it can help. And most critically for me, an ability to speak in a simplified, clear way across both of these themes to bridge that gap. A good translator is worth their weight in gold also in helping identify and size business cases, construct proofs of concept that will deliver tangible, quantified value that you can report back to the business, and ultimately they'll fly the flag for data and analytics within your business. It's not lost on me, good translators with that hybrid skill set are not that easy to find sometimes. They do exist, and I mean, it's something we often do for our clients as well, acting as that that glue between their teams and enabling them all to work together.
I think this is probably one of the most common things that we find with clients that they're struggling to overcome, is that they've got great people in data, great people in tech, great people in marketing. They know what they're trying to achieve, but that understanding and alignment and, you know, understanding each other and having that translation is really, really tricky. So yeah, it's a very, if you're feeling this yourself, you're not alone. It's a very, very common, very common situation.
And on the surface, it sounds subtle, but it is critical.
Yeah, completely.
Cool. That was number 5. Number 6, empower end users.
So for those who know me, might have heard me talk about educate, enable, and empower before. So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about empowerment. And it's really important, as are all the rest of these areas that we've talked about. But a mishap that we quite often see, or why people, you know, come to speak to us at Loop in the first place, is that they maybe implement some great tech, they do some great data engineering, they've got a marketing strategy, everything's ready to go, and it's just not really being adopted by the teams. So our solution there, which does take time and effort and a lot of communication, is about really empowering that team that are actually going to be utilising this technology to drive things forwards and change. It can feel tempting to almost do all the work up front and just give them the plan on a page and go, here you go. That isn't the most empowering. If you put yourself in that position, just to know that someone else has done it, you've not been engaged, and your thoughts and, you know, ideas maybe haven't been listened to, and it's really important that that is taken into account as part of that process up front. So get those end users, the marketing teams and the data analysts, get them involved from the beginning. And you can do that in terms of the actual process and explaining to them what we're trying to achieve, and we want to understand from you what, you know, how you can add value to this as well. But it also allows you to paint that vision and kind of give them that inspiration and motivation of, look, this is where we are now. We know maybe, you know, you have to do things really manually, or this is really difficult for you, or you're not able to see the results of the performance that you're driving because the attribution isn't set up effectively. There's a whole host of things. But this is where we want to get to, and we want to bring you along on that journey, and we want you to feel like you're driving that forwards yourself. So it's a tricky balance, which is quite often why it's not really sort of approached that proactively, because you want to be empowering the teams, you want to be getting them to feel sort of a bit of ownership and a bit of responsibility, but there's probably also going to be a bit of a fear of change as well. So I think this is where empathy really helps. Listen to your teams, understand what they're worried about, and allow them to have the time to understand, to get used to what's coming up, seeing the benefits and wanting to get on the bus. If you can do that, it makes everything else beyond that much easier, because they've got the desire, the passion, the interest. They're going to carry all of this forwards. So it's a really sort of, big area that we work on, big sort of passion of mine, to make sure that that actually happens, because in practice, what we're talking about here is change management, and, you know, it's transformation that we're talking about. You can't do that just by sort of instructing your teams to do what you want them to do without them feeling like they're empowered, and then having some pride in, you know, the outcome of what they'll be doing through the process. So from a practical point of view, I think listen to them, get them involved at the beginning, and allow them to have time. Quite often they're going to have other things they need to be delivering at the same time. Make sure there is dedicated time to work on this. And also look at their personal development, set it as an objective for them individually, so that they can really see that this is something important. They are going to be supported on it. And so that, they want to get on the bus and get involved. So that's number 6, and I think I'm next as well. So number 7, which kind of builds on this, is around, it's an enabler. So again, within that educate, enable, empower piece, enabling teams is very important. But what we think is really important, and we've seen again from our previous experience, but also at Loop as well, is the positioning of a transformation. Quite often, relating to that fear note that I mentioned, there's a concern that you're telling your teams, we're replacing what you've been doing. What you've been doing to date has been wrong, therefore we're having to change. But if you position this as not a replacement, it's not instead of, but it's to help you change and build and develop and adapt. It will make your life easier, it will make it more enjoyable, and actually you can then have the outputs that you want. That is, again, if you can imagine being in those shoes, a much more receptive way of being able to understand what's coming. And it's less abrasive. Obviously, we've talked a bit about the people side and getting the right teams on board, senior stakeholders and the teams, but don't underestimate the importance of positioning this appropriately all the way through. Yeah, it's one of the biggest things that we see time and time again. So yeah, it's not a replacement, it's not instead of, you haven't done anything wrong. This is to enable you to do what you want to do differently. It's an opportunity to help you and what you're trying to achieve in your role and your career at the end of the day as well. So I think also on a related note is number 8,
Yeah.
which is about embracing change.
So obviously we've spoken a lot about the impact of digital transformation on individuals. We've talked about, translators and all different roles within that. I think, as with anything and any change, progressive organisational opportunities can arise from transformation projects. And when I say progressive, I mean this is about looking forward and understanding that actually the transformation project you're sort of going through can throw up some amazing opportunity. And I think as that transformation starts to optimize and deliver results, teams deliver better performance, and the need for role development and team restructuring can arise. Successful structural changes are when clients are willing to embrace that change and open to a more agile way of working, and what I would call sort of more transitional roles, which I know everybody likes a bit of structure and stability, but sometimes the freedom to make a role more transitional, more adaptable to change can really help an individual flourish. So as an example, we've worked with a number of organisations that have very successful secondment schemes. So what that does is give sort of high performing individuals the opportunity to work within different projects. So if it's a digital transformation project, pulling out key people within different areas around the business, giving them a sort of a 3, 6, 9 months secondment opportunity where they can almost be part of a team, and a laser focus on a specific project allows them to kind of deliver a project, but also give an opportunity for individual development and sort of developing their growth mindset. And what that does also from a business point of view is test out a little bit of change and a little bit of movement within structures that perhaps, taking the leap to a full organizational restructure is quite a big, a big decision for businesses. But the idea of secondments can really help test out those new structures and see how people work together. I think, from my point of view, we work with a number of different businesses, and certainly, from my experiences, some businesses can, be a bit hesitant, but I do think, we need to be brave and face outdated team structures, because quite often when you go through a transformation, those structures don't necessarily fit as well. I think the key thing is, as we've said before about, cascading information, is taking people on that change journey early on, helping them to combat any resistance, listening to them, talking about job satisfaction, growth opportunities, and sharing proposals early on can help with any sort of negativity. So yeah, I mean, in my view is be open to change, be progressive, and give individuals a voice within that. But also look at potentially secondment structures or specific project structures that give people the chance to grow. That would be my views on that one. Number 9, measure, measure, measure.
So anyone who knows me will know this will be my favorite one. This one's very simple, really. Keep testing and keep learning. Learn about both what works and also what doesn't. It's simple, keep testing and learning, but it's by no means easy. But we should focus on it, and even on relatively small things, whatever we test and learn, even relatively small improvements can build upon each other and ladder up to pretty significant change. In any meaningful project, any meaningful transformation project, numbers can be your best friend if you lean into them and go after them, right? So one of the things we do first with pretty much every client I've worked on is And particularly when we're running experiments, we start off by understanding what our objectives are, what our metrics that we want to measure are, what are our big questions that we need answered. We list that all out, we get into a very clear framework of what we want to achieve and learn, and then we start thinking about running experiments. Nothing goes out unless it is measurable and actionable against these questions, because it's the answers to those questions that build proof points that can lead on to further transformation and goodwill within your business. So in terms of recommendations, do more, learn more, test more, set your metrics up front, know what you want to measure, empower your teams to do so as well. Remove that fear of failure. It's okay for an experiment to not work, to learn that something hasn't succeeded, because it will point you and focus you in the right direction towards what does. And keep it simple. A very small insight can lead to loads of further questions down the line that will lead to truly transformational change.
Yeah,
Cool.
so true. I think we talk a lot, don't we, about this one quite often being at the end of the process, because people think we need to get everything ready, we need to get some stuff live. Oh yeah, now we need to measure it. That doesn't really work in practice. You need to think about the measurement at the beginning, like you said, to know that you're actually measuring the right thing, you're looking at the right objectives, and it's actually possible to measure what you need. So yeah, really big thing to make sure you're doing at the beginning.
I never came across it before I joined Loop, but this idea of the big questions, I love that. The idea of like asking yourself, what are the 2-3 big questions that you want to answer as a result of this? And actually that then helps shape your measurement framework.
100%.
And that then also helps, like you're saying, everybody that's involved will kind of get behind those key big questions. What is it we're all trying to do? Let's stay focused on that. And I think that's it. A lot of this stuff isn't necessarily overly complex, but it needs focus and time given to it to make sure that it is brought together.
There's
so
a rigor,
right
there's a rigor and a discipline to it, as opposed to it being complex.
Which leads nicely to the last one.
Which leads nicely to the last one. So number 10 is stay calm and trust the process. So I'm going to start off by saying, obviously, we're talking a lot about transformation here. Transformation is quite a big word. It is a big thing. It is change management as much as it is looking at, we need to buy CDP. We need to rewrite all of our use cases. We need to do a huge amount of data engineering. There are some really big things at play here. So treat it almost with the respect that it needs. It is going to be quite difficult. It isn't straightforward. There's a lot of moving parts, like we've discussed, around technology, data, strategy, people. There's a lot that's going on here. So things might go wrong. Things might not go to plan. You might need to reprioritize. You might need to sort out some, internal political difficulties. There's going to be a host of things that you need to try and sort of approach throughout the process. It might take longer than you initially thought it would. There's a whole host of things which you do need to work through. So our recommendation is, where possible, try and mitigate those potential risks. That's a lot of what we're talking about today, is what are some of those watch outs? How can you try and avoid them by dealing with them up front? But then also, when they do come up, don't panic. It's very easy when you're in the situation and there's pressures, particularly if there's senior stakeholder expectations, to react and make quick decisions that maybe aren't informed, or you're having to just rush through. So where possible, but again, appreciating it's not always that easy, do try and just stay calm. There will be difficulties, but be aware that that's going to happen, and when they do arise, just try and keep that logical head on your shoulders. And the other thing that we would really recommend, because that is quite a lot to deal with, is a really, really good project management structure. Like we said, there's a lot of different moving parts. So to be able to actually understand what they all are, plan how they're all going to come together, communicate effectively from everybody involved, make sure that people are aware of what their roles and responsibilities are throughout the project is really important. Tracking progress to date, highlighting risks, and there's a lot of dependencies between all the different elements, so understanding how they work together and being able to see if they're playing out or not is really important. And then being able to mitigate some of those risks, escalating, communicating all of that out. We find it is absolutely, we are very dependent on our project management team. They're a wonderful set of people. So I think there's 2 parts to this. One is around mindset. So having the appropriate approach and mindset to embarking on a transformation and what it might involve, but then also at practical level, really strong project management is a lifesaver at times. So I think that's the end of number 10. So thank you guys. I hope that everyone has enjoyed listening to us talk through our top 10. There are many more, but we thought we'd focus on the ones that we see kind of most often. And like I said at the beginning, are quite often those unsung heroes. It is easy when you go into a marketing transformation to be, thinking about the big ticket items, particularly from a technology point of view. But to be successful, we really do recommend that you try and uncover these different types of elements up front as well, because we've seen it make a world of difference. And that's kind of the way that we work with clients at Loop, is not just on those big ticket items, but making sure that all the bases are covered, and that at the end of your transformation, you've actually got something which is transformed in the way that you need it to be. It is embedded with the teams. There is a genuine passion and interest in it, and then you can continue to evolve from there. Because without that part of it, it's all well and good having some great tech, but if it's not wanting to be used and being applied appropriately, you're not going to get the ROI that you're looking for. So I think, Ashley,
yes,
we're going to have
thinking
some time
we're going to have a
Q&A.
Q&A. We are going to have a Q&A.
Fantastic.
So we've got some questions that have come through here. So the first one we'll go through is around organizational change. So when talking about organizational change, you mentioned taking people on a change journey. What do you think the best approach to starting this journey would be?
Shall I take
Yeah,
that one?
go for it.
I think, well, just from my viewpoint, I think we've all tried to reiterate along, it's just communicating and being a decent human, listening, empathizing. If there's a big organizational change, understand that there are some HR processes that need to be followed, right? You can't necessarily provide all the information to everybody at the right time, particularly if individuals are affected. I think the biggest thing is understanding your people, understanding, the change curve that people go on. But I think that the key thing is speaking to people up front where you can. I talked a little bit about the secondments being an opportunity. If people have been within those secondments, they might be looking for organizational change. That might be the thing they need. And quite often, we find that when we've worked with organizations on org structures and, the best team structures, we find that actually those people are the ones who are more willing to embrace it, because they've got the mindset around change. There are some people who've worked for organizations a long time and are very fearful. For those people, you need to be really reassuring and understand that it's not them that needs to move on, it's the business, and actually they can go on that same journey. It's about being open-minded and transparent. That would be my view.
Yeah, I think encouraging that of the teams as well, to be open with what they would like to be able to do as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a client we're working with at the moment, and going through that process, someone kind of put their hand up and went, actually, I find that really interesting. That's kind of a new opportunity. Can I spend a bit more time on that? And that's now been brought into the org structure, and actually now the team is set up in a way that takes advantage of that. That person gets personal development, and it aligns to what the business is trying to do. So I think it's both being open to it from a business point of view, but also encouraging the teams to be open about their own personal development, their interests, because quite often existing structures can restrict them, and thinking, I'm not allowed to do that over there, so I'm just going to stay in my box. So a lot of discussion and encouragement.
I think your point around enablement rather than replacement plays a big part here as well, right? Understanding upfront what people are trying to achieve, positioning, using emotional intelligence and positioning whatever you're building as an enabler to their vision should reduce resistance. A lot of the time, at least that's what
it might go without saying as well, and this we were at an event last week and it came up, because I think sometimes there's an assumption that there is a blueprint of this is how you should be structured to be able to transform how you work. there are principles, there's things that generally work well, but they need to be applied to you and your
Yeah.
business and your individual people and their skill sets. And that's kind of the process that we go through. So yeah, there isn't a rubber stamp, here it is, there's the plan, because that's not going to work. It needs to be adapted. And that's where the people in your teams can really help feed into that.
Okay, so another one here. I always think about this with any change. How do you balance the need for innovation with the risk of disrupting existing strategies?
I feel like this might be a test and learn.
And maybe like, you might want to knock onto this, as I know measurement's your love as well, at
Yeah.
it, right? Which is ultimately how do we measure the success, which maybe brings
Got it.
both of those things together.
I'll answer the first one first. Short answer, horses for courses. It depends on your business and what you're trying to achieve. With some of our clients, what we do is we spin up like an innovation pod, a virtual team, and we like basically cut off a small aspect of the business and its goals, and we do it in an innovative way, a way that's ring fence incubated away from the day-to-day trading activity, so you know if anything's going to be affected, how big that effect is going to be, so you're not affecting your wholesale activity. Another thing we've done most recently is picking a specific campaign, hiving off a proportion of an audience, and then testing new ways of working there with them. Again, it provides parameters for what will be affected, most likely positively, but it mitigates perceived risk for the business, because you're saying we're going to test in this small area here among this small subset of customers. We expect to see positive improvements, but just in case we don't, it's only affecting this little sliver. You can quantify it. People are a lot more comfortable with that, which feeds into the measurement piece. I'm a big fan of control cells at all levels, at a campaign level, at a program level, at a product or divisional silo level, and at a group level. If we can take controls, palatably sized representative controls at the various levels where we want to measure, we're able to prove the benefit of what we're doing in a way that everyone throughout the business will be happy with, from marketing teams through to finance, the most robust way of measuring anything.
Within the framework, you've got that kind of layering, haven't you, of the micro up to the macro, which helps suit, like you said, whether it's the guys in the teams making sure their campaigns are doing what they need to be doing and optimizing, but then also the senior stakeholders, the CEOs who want to see how it's approaching change for the business as a whole. So you've kind of got layers within that framework.
I think the other thing I'd say is, and very much related to kind of what we spoke about earlier, was kind of setting expectations, because often some of this sort of testing framework won't deliver huge results. It'll be green shoots that can then be taken by the business, adopted and scaled into a BAU and embedded into a BAU process. So don't be afraid if it's a small result. If it's a positive result, that's a good thing, and there's an opportunity to crack that nut and open it up to a wider opportunity. So I think testing is potentially small scale, and people are afraid to do it sometimes because it feels too small, but actually there is an opportunity to utilize those learnings on a sort of wider scale.
And is that important to set that expectation that some of this transformation may not create earth-changing results, but as you say, will show us the green shoots of what we can get?
At the beginning of that journey, so I think you almost need to demonstrate what the phases of a transformation are. So the first one is probably sorting out a lot of what we've talked about today, getting the teams being able to just understand and start, almost like, turning the ignition, getting something going. We're almost kind of in first gear, do some tests, you've got some proof points in a relatively safe, sort of risk-averse way. Once you've got that then effectively unlocks the next stage, which is to start scaling it. And then you can really get into optimization phase from there. So I think it's not just a case of saying to senior stakeholders, or all stakeholders, we'll get there, but in 5 years' time, because that's not really going to do the job. You need to demonstrate what the steps are to achieve that, and what value is going to come from each stage, and how they depend on each other. And that's what we do with a lot of clients in terms of setting out that strategy up front. because yeah, it's easy to talk about the as is and, you know, after the possible. Yes, we can get there, but how are you going to get there? Well, it's steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, you're going to chip away at it, and you're going to drive lots of small incremental improvements potentially. You might find this nugget, this thing, this quick win, this unicorn of something really easy to get to. They'll drive maximum benefit. We've seen that as well, right? If you don't be scared to chip away at the little stuff. A 1% improvement in a conversion rate on an email that you run weekly may be small in the test, but you multiply it by 52, you scale it up to the full audience, you then bake in extra improvements that you'll make over time. Often
Which
results
then
in a
looking
big
at that
number.
across different products and different business units. So yeah, you need to get those proof points right at the beginning to then allow it to scale. If you just try and scale from the beginning, that's where the risk comes in, and then you end up having to go backwards. So yeah, it's just taking that logical step-by-step approach.
Okay, so last question here, and I feel it might be bigger than you can fully answer for the rest of the few minutes we've got. But what are the, let's say, some of the best practices for creating a customer-centric approach to your transformation strategy?
It's a good question, because a lot of people that we work with think that they're customer-centric, but in practice, maybe not so much. I think it gets confused. I think a lot of people think they know they need to be customer-centric, but how you actually do it in practice is quite difficult. I think there's a few different layers. One, which maybe I'll touch on, is around that mindset. So actually creating your strategy, your big questions, your objectives to actually be about the customer. Quite often they are business-led questions, they are business-led objectives. We need to hit this amount of revenue, for example. If you have those as your end goal, then you're having to almost try and fit the customer in somewhere else. And that doesn't really work, because it's almost like you're trying to fudge it. So have those starting blocks customer focus. So look at your customer life cycle, understand the journey, do the data analysis, do the consumer insight analysis to actually understand who your customers are. And that isn't just sort of a market study, but actually look at who your current customers are, what are the behaviours that they're showing, and therefore what should the objectives be. And I think if you can get that clear from the beginning, again, it's another one, maybe this is number 11, is think about the customer at the beginning. Don't just try and go, oh, we're going to attain all of this revenue, we're going to change all of these commercial benefits. Oh yeah, we probably need to do it via the customer, because it gets a bit desperate in the way that then it gets chased. I forgot what the rest of the question was. Sorry, Ashley.
I was just going to add to that. I think, you know, for me, from my experience and the clients we've worked with, the best ones are the ones that have an open conversation with their clients. So they don't just sit there in their offices looking at data and metrics and even insight. They actually are going out there and talking to their customers. So, you know, I quite often hear, and rightly so, people celebrating an email open rate of 65%, for example. That's high, but actually that's 35% of your customers that aren't opening that email. So you need to talk to those 35% and understand why they aren't opening that email. So, you know, for me, is looking at a granular level of looking at customer engagement across your marketing campaigns and understanding those who are not responding. What can they tell you as much as those who are responding? And I think that for me is important, and having a conversation, a way of reaching those non-engaged customers is just as critical as kind of celebrating the engagement stats.
And if you think about that, and actually there's clients that we're working with at the moment, quite often that kind of that set of the customer segment is almost written off. It's well, there isn't much value there because it hasn't been driven, but the opportunity of the value from that point is huge, which then does bring you back around to the commercial benefit. But you're doing it to make sure that the customer is having a good experience first. The commercial benefit is a secondary factor that comes as a result.
So it feels like it's almost a ethos to keep in mind and like look there for untapped potential.
I mean, at the end of the day, they were your customers once. They had an engagement at one point. You know, that you can get those people back, and actually it's more cost effective to get those people back than acquire new ones at the top of the funnel.
I think it also, just final point on it, I think it also ties back to what we were talking about before about that value beyond revenue, is that actually there's things that you can look at and track and measure and incentivize, which aren't just about revenue outputs. It could be about engagement in a channel. It could be that maybe they're on the website and they're browsing onto different products now because you've seen what they're interested in and you recommended something to them. And it might just be an engagement piece of content, but you're recommending them something which is actually relevant and useful. So quite a lot of what we're doing with our clients now is looking at not just the direct sales led activity, but the rest of their engagement strategy. So how do you nurture them? How do you keep them engaged with useful, interesting, relevant content? Might not even have a sales message, but it's strengthening that relationship. Again, so that then when potentially, you know, their next purchase comes up, you're more front of mind because you've got a relationship, and then you get the revenue benefit. So it's trying to flip it. So it's customer first, and then revenue second. But just be careful how you position it to the CEO.
Well, super wonderful. Look, so congratulations, team. You didn't see that, but ticker tape all just showered down in front of you. Wow. It was green. It looked really, really good. So look, on behalf of the audience team, thank you very much for doing this. It's wonderful. As a first webcast from a marketing services team, I'm sure we'll be doing more. This will be available on demand. If you have any questions, obviously you can't ask them live if we're on demand, but send them through info@loophorizon.com, and we're sure they'll get through to the team and we'll come back to you with any questions. Obviously, also feel free to reach out to us if you want to talk to us about any projects, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.